So good afternoon. My name is Kristin Poole, and I'm the Artistic Director at the Foster. And I'm really delighted that Brother Chrysostom from the Christ in the Desert Monastery has agreed to join us today to talk a little bit about what Christ in the Desert is and the history of monasteries in the American Southwest, and help us understand a little bit more about people's experience there and the purpose of the monastery. So thank you for your time. We're really grateful to have you here with us. And I without going into some lengthy history, I'm wondering if you can remind us how the tradition of establishing monasteries in the United States began.
Thank you for having me. Monasteries are fairly new to the North American continent. And so the first Benedictine monastery in what is now the United States was in Pennsylvania around 1840s, 1848, I think. And from there, Benedictine monasteries propagated and spread after the Civil War. So monasteries kind of started in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and then spread out throughout the country. Benedictine monasteries began with our founder, Saint Benedict, 480 AD in Norcia, Italy. He created a rule for living together as a community, a Christocentric community, and it became the form of monasticism that was most widely used in Europe and within the Western Church, and it became the dominant form. There are other types of monasteries and other types of rules, but the rule of Saint Benedict and Benedictines became sort of the standard for monasticism in Europe, and then as it propagated to other parts of the world.
What is the relationship that you and others in the monastery have to the physical location in the desert, and do you spend time in the desert?
Monks probably could be noted or assign a position along the early environmentalists in the world, because very much how we lived as monasteries in ancient environments, we had to be very mindful and cognizant of our environments, because that's where we got our food. That's how we had to survive. And,
so living in harmony was part of that process.
Yes, because one of the things about monasteries is that they don't move. We're not a mission. We don't move from here to there. We're in one place for life. So that means that one place has to be suitable and healthy, and one that enriches our spiritual as well as our physical being. So we are very much in touch with our environment. One, waking up every morning and looking out the window, you can't help but be impressed by the beauty every day. It never gets old. We have sheep, a flock of sheep that we raise here, and they're always in the environment because they have to eat. We have horses. I am the beekeeper at the monastery, so I'm very attuned to the flora and fauna and making sure that our bees have enough pollen and food to hopefully support us with some honey.
Yeah.
Many brothers, of course, enjoy just taking walks in and around the canyon. I biannually, I try to scale one of our canyon walls, not directly, but through a path.
Right.
It just gets longer each year for some reason. I don't know why, but there is that.
That does happen.
It just takes longer. I mean, before it didn't take that long, but now it takes longer. But I do that as long as I can. And of course, behind me, I have a bicycle, so I'm on the road in and around here because our property is large, and I need to get back and forth. So we are always in the environment. of the environment and, of course, for the environment.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to have this conversation because I, of course, knew that there was this desire to be in relationship to the land as it related to the food, but I had never really thought about that. Of course, then you have to be very in tune with the systems and uh, the sort of evolution of your day and your year in order to plan and to grow food. And I love the idea of you taking care of the bees too. Thank you for welcoming Tony. And I imagine that this will spur others to come to Christ in the Desert.
Well, we're open and we're ready to receive you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really
You're most
appreciate
welcome.
it. Tony, thank you for joining us again to talk about sacred places, watercolor diaries from the American Southwest. Today, we'd like to talk about Christ in the Desert, which is such an unusual insertion in this sort of journey. What was the process of being welcomed and
well, it is open to visitors, but
right?
I think you do have to book in, I think. But I don't think they ask any questions or anything. I think it's open to anybody to go. You obviously have to abide by the rules, which are complete silence at all times. And they don't charge you to stay there. They supply you with a cell to sleep in, which has got a plank bed and a blanket and a little box to put your clothes in, and a lamp of some sort. Don't think it was electric. I can't remember. But I think it was just a lamp or a candle. It might have been a candle. Anyway, it's very basic, of course, but it's still better than sleeping outdoors, which is what I usually do. So to me, it seemed like luxury. It's extremely remote. I mean, I think 16 miles down a dirt track into the desert, basically. And certainly nobody would come across it by accident. And I guess that's what they wanted. As a silent order, that must make life much simpler if there's nobody else around.
Yeah.
They're very caring and caring of the land, and they certainly do as little damage as possible. I mean, it's very discreet. The place is very discreet. You would hardly even see it. And in fact, on the bigger painting that I did, in the picture is actually the monastery church, but you can barely see it because it fits into the landscape so fantastically well that it's almost invisible.
It's lovely and subtle.
Yeah.
Well,
very,
I
very
think it gets to one of the questions about the nature of sacred places and how places can be sacred in different ways, I think, because I don't get the impression when I read about Christ in the Desert or from your experience that there is a regular practice of the monks spending time in the desert. So, but they must get inspiration from it. But it's a really different kind of relationship than the tribal relationship, than the native relationship with the land, which is an active, collaborative process of paying attention and cultivating and nurturing and receiving and harvesting, and that's really different than so it's just interesting about how things can be sacred in different ways.
I guess what they really love about the place is its silence. And I mean, there are certain times during the day when you enter profound silence, which is usually after the evening service. And profound silence in the desert is really profound silence. I mean, you don't hear a thing, except the occasional bird or animal howling. But otherwise, it is a profound silence. And I guess as they get their spiritual power, shall we say, from the fact that they are contemplative, then there couldn't be a better place for it, could there, than the desert? A very beautiful piece of desert too.
Let's talk about the paintings a little bit. It was fun to revisit them, and what struck me immediately about the painting that you did looking north at Rio Chama. My idea of the southwestern desert is that beautiful orange sandstone and the color of the rocks and the blue sky and that contrast. But in this painting, there are vibrant greens around the river. And
And I love how you use that green to sort of draw you right in. It takes you right into the foreground of the painting and right into the river. There are very little other places. It prompted me to look through and see that that green is really not used anywhere else. It's quite lovely.
Yes, well, of course, it's fed by the river, and these under normal circumstances, probably that's usually underwater. Those little islands and things, but which means that, of course, they're actually quite fertile and well watered, obviously. But yes, it is a dazzling color against that Indian red and that light red, which is the color that I paint the rocks.
All of these three paintings from this moment have really specific souvenirs. And
yes,
can you talk about how you came up with those and found them and made them?
Yes, of course. Each of them is started off with a glass tube. What I was thinking about really was, whenever I've gone into a Catholic church, I always love to look at their reliquaries, which are, there's a saint's finger bone or something in this most extraordinarily beautiful crystal setting with gold and jewels, and they're just such extraordinarily wonderful things. I think they seem to contain such history and such they've got such extraordinary significance on these little tiny objects which they contain. And I thought I was going to make reliquaries for this particular little series of paintings, and so each of them is inside a glass tube, and you'll see that I've used gold sealing wax to hold the thing together where I've put the things that are hanging from it. They've got a white stone, which is a Christian symbol of purity. They've got a little cross, which I made out of a little twig that I'd found. I'd just go and find a twig and then bind it together to make a little crucifix. They've got a shell, which is a symbol for a pilgrim, because I felt that I was on a sort of pilgrimage. And they've got a little cast piece of metal, really reflecting the Spanish heritage. And then they've also got a little religious medal. And then inside the glass tube, and two of them anyway, are rosaries. So all those are very, very straightforward symbols, really, for the Christian religion.
I have two questions about specific paintings. So for the little one, Tree in the Rock in a Blind Canyon, you are constantly, we forget, we look at these paintings and we love these paintings. There's a hint in your diaries of really the daily danger that you're in, and I don't know if you exploit it, but I talk about this incident and I think about how vulnerable you are on a daily basis when you're out there by yourself.
Yeah, well, I certainly felt it on that when I was doing that painting. That's true. It had been snowing that during the night, and everything looked absolutely beautiful. But when I went out to start work on that sort of larger painting, there was just this absolutely bitter, battering wind coming up the canyon, and so I thought, well, I can't possibly work in that. Just impossible. And so I went off into a side canyon. And I looked up and saw the mesa at the top and thought it'd be very interesting to see what it was like up there. But I got about 2/3 of the way up onto the mesa, and then I just couldn't get any further. So I started to come down, and the funny thing is that just as I was coming down, I was thinking, because I was feeling a bit vulnerable, I must admit, and I was thinking, I know that more accidents happen on the way down than on the way up. And sure enough, just as I thought that, this rock that I was balanced on, it was a piece of rock sticking out from the rock face, just broke under my foot, and the rock and I both fell down to the sandy bottom of the canyon, and the rock landed on my leg, but as luck would have it, one edge of the rock was balanced on a big stone that was there, which alleviated it somewhat, and then I was on a very soft sand, and the rock, which is about the size of a suitcase, actually just forced my leg into the sand, and I was able simply then, after I kind of realized I hadn't broken my leg or smashed my hip, I was able then to just dig my leg out, really. So I scraped the sand out underneath and dragged my leg out. Shaken but not stirred, as you might say. But
Unbelievable.
yeah,
Really,
but,
I mean, so fortunate
yeah.
that you landed in sand.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The funny thing is that painting, you know, I obviously must have got over it pretty fast, because that painting is a very crisp, straightforward, really, really nicely rendered little painting. I really like it, and
it's one of my favorite paintings from this whole series. I love,
really, yeah.
I love the way that you execute the pinion. Are they pinions? Pinions.
I think so. Yeah.
Leaves or brush, and the sky is lovely. You know, it's it's gorgeous. The rocks are beautiful. It's a lovely one. And I assume too, Tony, one of the things that is in the foreground of that painting, where you see at the very, very, the very, very front foreground, where you have the grasses, sort of the negative of the grasses. Is that actual paint, or are you just painting around, using the watercolor paper to be the white?
Yeah, just using watercolor paper. That's right. Yes.
Extraordinary. That's what I'm first thinking.
It does, because it sort of it plunges you straight into the work somehow.
Yeah,
it also connects, because I don't finish right up to the edge of any painting, and so it sort of incorporates the paper directly into the work, which is what I like about it, really.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you. I'm really glad that you went to Christ in the Desert. I think that when we talk about the sacredness of places, there's so many different ways to think about that and to digest it. And they're beautiful paintings. So thank you for sharing them with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye, Kristin.